Okay, hello to all of you. Let's discuss chapter number 12. Okay, let me go into the slideshow mode. Okay. Okay, so chapter number 12 talks about host defenses. So what does host defenses basically means? So host defenses basically means when we are infected with the microorganisms, so how our body reacts and how our body protects us from these infections. So basically these defense mechanisms, they act at three different levels. So first is the first line of defense, then the second line of defense, and the third line of defense. So basically the first line of defense is any barrier that blocks the invasion at the port of entry, and it limits the access to the internal tissues of the body. Second line of defense basically involves the system of protective cells and fluids, and it includes inflammation and phagocytosis. And the third line of defense basically involves lymphocytes, and it's a very specific kind of a defense mechanism. And there are two kinds of lymphocytes, B and the T lymphocytes. So this overall shows the host defenses. The first category is innate and non-specific, and second is acquired and specific. So in the innate and non-specific includes the first line of defense, which includes the surface protection, which is composed of anatomical and physiological barriers that keep microbes from penetrating sterile body compartments. So it includes physical barriers, then the chemical barriers, and the microbiome. Second category is the category line of defense, which includes the cellular and chemical system. Basically, it involves the process like your phagocytosis and inflammation, and also involves fever and the antimicrobial products. So under the second line of defense, we will be talking about phagocytosis, inflammation, fever, and antimicrobial products. And the third line of defense is acquired, and it is specific, and it involves the special cells which are called lymphocytes, and there are two kinds of lymphocytes, B and the T lymphocytes. So we just talked about first line of defense is physical and chemical barrier that is going to impede the entry of microbes into the body, which includes your skin, then it includes your hair, even the sweat also has basically flushing effect of removing the microbes. Then the system of mucous membranes of digestive, urinary, respiratory tracts, and the eye. So mucous coat impedes entry and attachment of the bacteria. So like the blinking and tear production flushes the eye surfaces. Then we have saliva that also carries the microbes to the harsh conditions of stomach. In the stomach, the pH is very low. So all these are first line of defense mechanism. Vomiting, defecation, basically it all removes the microbes from the body. Then in the respiratory tract, there are nasal hair which can trap the large particles. Then mucus and fluids basically provide flushing actions, and ciliated epithelium conveys particles trapped in the mucus towards the pharynx. So these are all first line of defense mechanisms. Then in the genitourinary tract, there is a protection through the continuous trickle of urine through the ureters. Then in the vaginal secretions, basically in the vaginal secretions, they provide the cleansing for the lower reproductive tract of the females. Then there are many other examples. And the human microbiome means the normal flora which resides on our skin and inside our system. They also give the first line of defense mechanism. So basically, they can block the access of pathogens to the epithelial surfaces. They can create an unfavorable environment for pathogens by competing for limited nutrients and by altering the local pH. And then there are some chemicals which can also provide the first line of defense mechanism, which includes your sebaceous secretions, exert an antimicrobial effect. Then there are some specialized glands of the eyelids They lubricate the conjunctiva with the antimicrobial secretions. Then lysozyme is the enzyme which is found in tears and saliva that hydrolyzes the peptidoglycan in the cell wall of bacteria. Okay, so this enzyme which is found in tears and the saliva, it can break the peptidoglycan in the cell wall of bacteria. Then there is a high lactic acid and electrolytes in the sweat. Then acidic pH and fatty acid content is there in the skin. Then hydro HCl in the stomach. Then the digestive juices and bile in the intestine. Antimicrobial chemical in semen. Protective pH in the vagina. So this is all basically the chemical defense mechanisms. First line of defense mechanism. Second line of defense mechanism basically involves the process, phagocytosis, inflammation, fever, and antimicrobial proteins, and that's what we're going to talk about. So first of all, phagocytosis. So basically, phagocytosis is a process which involves some special kind of cells which are called phagocytes, and they include neutrophils, monocytes, and the macrophages. And what is their activities? The activities of phagocytes is survey the tissue compartments, and they discover microbes, particulate matter, and injured or dead cells. They ingest and eliminate these materials, and they extract the immunological information. They basically expose the antigens on these microbes. So these are the four second line of defense mechanisms we're going to talk about, which include phagocytosis, inflammation, fever, and antimicrobial proteins. Okay. So basically, neutrophils, they are general purpose phagocytes. They react early in the inflammatory response to bacteria and other foreign materials and to the damaged tissue. And the high neutrophil content in the blood is the common sign of bacterial infection. And neutrophils are the primary components in the pus. And second category of phagocytes are monocytes. And these monocytes, they are the ones which are actually transformed into macrophages after they migrate out of the bloodstream and they go into the tissues. So when these cells are in the blood, they're called monocytes. And when they move into tissues, they're called macrophages. And there are different kinds of macrophages. There are macrophages in lungs, there are in liver, in the skin, lymph nodes, spleen, bone marrow. So phagocytosis is a process in which these phagocytic cells, they can engulf the microbes and they can just digest them. And that's what we're going to talk about, the different steps in the events of phagocytosis, which include first of all chemotaxis, ingestion, phagolysosome formation, destruction, and excretion. So it's shown here. So there are some special receptors on the cells, on these phagocytes. They are called PRRs. They are called pattern recognition receptors on the host cells. And then there are similar kind of proteins which are there on the microbes. They're called PAMs. So basically these PRRs, they recognize PAMs and then they bind to each other. And then the engulfment takes place, and inside there's a formation of a vacuole, and then this vacuole fuses with the lysosomes, and because these lysosomes have digestive enzymes, and they just digest the microbe. So these are the steps of phagocytosis. First of all is chemotaxis. Now chemotaxis is a process in which there is a kind of attraction of these phagocytes, or there's a migration of the phagocytes into the region of inflammation with a deliberate sense of direction, attracted by a gradient of stimulant products from the parasite and host tissues at the site of injury. So chemotaxis, basically these just give me 1 second. Okay. So basically, So chemotaxis, so basically is the recruitment of the phagocytes at the site of the injury or the inflammation, and then there is a adhesion of phagocytes. There's a adhesion. There's a binding of the phagocytes to the microbes through their PAMs. So phagocytes use their PRRs. So this is a phagocyte. Okay, so Phagocytes use their PRRs to recognize PAMs on the foreign cells, that's the microbes. This receptor interaction causes the two to stick together. So the bacteria, they have these receptors on them, they're called PAMs. They are recognized by the phagocytes through PRRs, and they bind on them. Okay. So once this binding takes place, these bacteria, they are engulfed into these cells. They are engulfed into these cells, and there is a formation of this kind of a vacuole, and then or we can also call it a phagosome. And then this phagosome basically fuses with the lysosome and forms phagolysosome. And these lysosomes, they have digestive enzymes in them, and that helps in the digestion of the bacteria. So these are some of the steps of the phagocytosis. Okay, so this is all what I just said. What are PAMs? They are pathogen associated molecular patterns, and they are basically signal molecules found on the microbial surfaces, which are recognized by phagocytes and other defensive cells, and they act as like a red flags for the phagocytes. And in the bacteria, the PAMs include peptidoglycan and lipopolysaccharide, and in the viral PAMs include double-stranded RNA. And on the host, there are PRRs, pattern recognition receptors. They are found on phagocytes, dendritic cells, endothelial cells, and lymphocytes, and they recognize and bind the PAMs. So these are some of the steps of steps of inflammation. First of all, rubor, which is a redness, which is caused by there's a redness in the area of inflammation. There's a calor, which is a warmth given by the heat given because there is an increased blood supply in that area. Then tumor, because there's a swelling because of the accumulation of water. Then dolor, which is a pain which is caused by the stimulation of the nerve endings. So there are some chronic diseases such as cardiovascular disease, which is caused by chronic inflammation. And then aging is also a consequence of increasing inflammation in the multiple body systems. Okay, so here are basically functions of inflammation. You can go over them. So basically inflammation is a defensive, it's a defense mechanism. Okay, so it's a means for the body to maintain stability and restore itself from after injury. And these are some of the steps of inflammation. So in this, first of all, at the place of injury, there is a release of some chemical mediators and the cytokines, and then there is basically the vasoconstriction, the blood vessels, they constrict, they relax, and then also there is edema, and the pus formation, which is all because of the accumulation of water, and eventually the last step is the repair. So these are some of the events which takes place in the inflammation. So first of all, inflammation takes place where there is an injury, and following an injury, early changes occur in the vasculature, which is the arterioles, capillaries, and the venules in the vicinity of the damaged area. So these are all the these are all blood vessels. So when there is an injury, these changes takes place in the blood vessels. So these changes are controlled by some chemical mediators and cytokines, which are released by blood cells, tissue cells, and platelets in the injured area. Then after that, there are some vascular reactions which takes place. In quick succession, the blood vessels in the vicinity, they dilate, they widen, and then constrict, and then dilate again. The narrow, wide sequence is thought to be the purpose of flushing irritants such as bacteria away from the area. So that's why they relax, they constrict. And then there is a edema, there's a accumulation of water and the pus formation in that area. And eventually is the repair. Repair is the last step. So there are two terms which we need to know. Chemotaxis we have already talked about, like there is a migration of the phagocytes in the area where there is some infection. So that's what chemotaxis is, migration of cells in response to specific chemical stimulus. And diapedesis is the migration of white blood cells out of blood vessels into the tissues. So you can see here, like this is the blood vessel, and these are the neutrophils. You can see how they are moving out of the blood vessels and they are going towards the tissues. So this is called diapedesis. So why does edema takes place and why there are leaky vessels in the inflammation? This is because of the reason of the influx of fluids. It basically dilutes the toxic substances. So why there is an accumulation? Because this is a defense mechanism. So why there is an accumulation of water? It's all because it dilutes the toxic substances. And also there is a formation of clots, fibrin clots, because these fibrin clots can trap the microbes to prevent further spread. The next defense mechanism we are going to talk about, so we talked about phagocytosis, then we talked about inflammation, and third is fever. Okay, so we have already discussed two mechanisms. This is phagocytosis, and then we talked about the inflammation. So these are the different stages of the inflammation. And the next is fever. So we know that whenever there is some kind of infection, we get fever. So fever is a sign of infection. So normal body temperature is 37 or 98.6. And then we do have, depending on the different kinds of infections, we do have a low grade fever or the high grade fever. And fever is also associated with some kind of allergies, cancers, and other illnesses. Basically, we get fever because of pyrogens, and they can be, what are pyrogens? They are the ones which can increase the body temperatures. There can be two kinds of pyrogens. They can be exogenous pyrogens or they can be endogenous pyrogens. Now, exogenous pyrogens, they are the products of infectious agents such as viruses, bacteria, protozoa, fungus, and endogenous pyrogens, they are liberated by monocytes, neutrophils, and macrophages. So endogenous pyrogens means something which is basically produced inside your body, and exogenous pyrogens means something which is coming from outside. So what's the benefit of fever? Basically, it inhibits the multiplication of temperature sensitive microorganisms such as poliovirus, cold viruses, herpes zoster virus, and it also impedes the nutrition of bacteria by reducing the availability of iron. Treatment of fever, basically if the fever is low grades, sometimes it's a moderate fever, it is basically it should run its course. But if it's a very high, then it should be treated because there are some side effects of fever. I mean, fever is a kind of a defense mechanism. It can cause tachycardia, which is a rapid heart rate, then tachypnea, elevated respiratory rate, and lowering of seizure threshold. The last one we're going to talk about the antimicrobial products. Now, first of all is interferon. So basically, interferons are produced by white blood cells and tissue cells, and it was originally thought that they are directed against viruses, but they are also involved in defense against microbes and immune regulation and intercommunication. There are two kinds of interferons. It can be interferon alpha and beta, which is produced by lymphocytes, fibroblasts, and the macrophages, and interferon gamma, which is produced by the T cells. So basically, the function of these interferons is they can they can bind to the cell surfaces and they can induce changes in the genetic expression. So all three interferons can inhibit the expression of cancer genes and have tumor suppressor effects. So interferon alpha and beta, they stimulate phagocytes, and interferon gamma is the immune regulator of macrophages and the T and B cells. So basically, how does these interferons work? So basically, when there is some kind of a viral infection, that infected cell basically produces the interferons, Okay, so there are genes in the cells. This is an infected cell, it is getting infected by the virus. So the gene is going to be stimulated and it produces interferons, and these interferons then go and bind. Then these interferons go and bind to some special receptors on other cells. Okay, so these interferons go and bind to some special receptors on the nearby cells, and as a result of that there is activation of some genes in this cell, which either basically degrades the viral nucleic acids, or it basically prevents the protein synthesis of the viruses. So binding of interferon induces the production of proteins in the cell that inhibit viral multiplication. It degrades viral RNA, or it prevents the translation of viral proteins. The next antimicrobial product is complement. Complement basically it consists of 30 blood proteins that work in concert to destroy bacteria and certain viruses. So it basically these complements are involved in a cascade of reaction in which there is a series of reactions, and these proteins basically bind to each other and then they form a complex, and that complex is called the membrane attack complex. So there are 4 stages in the complement cascade. So in the initiation, so C3 protein basically either free or bound to the pathogen membrane. So it binds, either it's free or it's bound to the pathogen membrane, is hydrolyzed into 2 fragments, C3b and C3a. And then it activates the other protein called C5, and C5 cleaves into C5a and C5b. So then C5b is then free, and it forms a complex with C6, C7 and C8, and it forms a membrane attack complex. And this membrane attack complex is positioned on and form pores in the cell's membranes, and it loses structure integrity. So there are 2 kinds of complement pathways. First is the classical complement pathway, and second is the alternative complement pathway. So classical complement pathway is initiated by binding to the antibodies that are already bound to microbes. And alternative complement pathway does not require antibody to get started. So this you can see, this is the complement pathway. So you can see this is C3, and this C3 breaks into C3a and C3b, and then this C3b, then C3b cleaves C5 into C5a and C5b. Okay, and then this C5b binds to C6, C7, C8 and C9, and together it forms a membrane attack complex, and it goes and binds to the membrane of the bacteria. And the last one is antimicrobial peptides, and these are basically short peptides which have around 12 to 50 amino acids. And they are like, the example is defensin. So they have ability to insert themselves into the bacterial membranes, and they can create the pores in the bacterial membranes. And researchers are looking ways to turn these antimicrobial peptides into therapeutic drugs. So basically you can see that this is a peptide, and it can create a hole in the, it can create a pore in the membrane of the bacteria. So that's all in chapter number 12. If you have any question, please let me know.